gonna walk unless I raise my hand. I do what I gotta do.
Even though you're breaking law?
Hollywood has a saying: every television production is one bad day away from complete disaster. But what happens when that bad day stretches into a bad week, a bad month, or just one actor so completely off the rails that the cameras stop, the crew goes home, and the whole thing gets rebuilt from scratch? That is what we are talking about today. Entire episodes gone, reshot, rebuilt. Because one person in the cast decided the rules did not apply to them. And trust me, some of these names are going to surprise you. Hi, my name is Aaron, and this is Old TV Cinema. Number 14, Tori Spelling, Beverly Hills. 92. 10. Let's ease into this list gently, shall we? One of the more surprising entries, and one that the production team behind Beverly Hills, 902. 10. Tried very hard to keep quiet for years. Beverly Hills 9. 021. O debuted in 1990 on Fox and quickly became the defining teen drama of its era. All Walsh family, West Beverly Hills High, beach parties, and more relationship drama than a therapist could handle in a lifetime. And right there in the middle of it all was Donna Martin, played by Tori Spelling. Now, Tori Spelling's casting on this show is one of Hollywood's most openly discussed acts of nepotism. Her father, Aaron Spelling, was the show's executive producer. And look, I am not here to pile on, but that particular dynamic created some interesting power imbalances on set that the rest of the cast and crew had to navigate very carefully. In the show's earlier seasons, there were multiple accounts from crew members of scenes needing to be completely redone. Not because of technical failures, but because of issues with Spelling's performance and what former crew members described as an unwillingness to take direction from anyone who was not, shall we say, a blood relative. One director who worked on the show during the first 2 seasons later described trying to direct certain scenes as like suggesting to someone that their kid's crayon drawing might need a little work. You technically can do it, but the consequences land on you, not the kid. A specific episode from season 2 required significant reshooting after a confrontation scene was deemed unusable due to what production documents reportedly described as inconsistent performance and difficulty following direction on set. The episode was quietly patched together with additional footage and a reordered scene structure that glossed over the problem. Most viewers never noticed. Most crew members never forgot. Number 13. Shelley Winters, Roseanne. Roseanne Barr's sitcom. Roseanne was one of the great working-class comedies in American television history. From 1988 through 1997, it tackled money problems, marriage struggles, and the chaos of raising kids in a house that always felt just slightly too small for everyone in it. It was real, it was raw, and it was frequently hilarious. In 1991, the show brought in Shelley Winters for a guest appearance. Winters was a Hollywood legend by this point, a 2-time Academy Award winner with decades of film experience under her belt. On paper, it seemed like a fantastic get for the show. In practice, it was one of the more chaotic guest appearances the production had ever dealt with. Multiple crew members from the Roseanne production have spoken over the years about the difficulties of working with Winters during this period. She was, by multiple accounts, frequently unprepared, resistant to hitting her marks, and prone to unilaterally deciding that the scripted dialogue was less interesting than whatever she felt like saying in the moment. Now look, improvisation is a legitimate art form, but there is a difference between organic, creative improvisation that lifts a scene and one performer going completely off script in a way that leaves their scene partners stranded and the camera operator scrambling. Several key scenes had to be rebuilt almost from scratch after footage came back unusable. The episode aired. It looked fine. But if you had been standing in that studio during production, you would not have believed what you were watching. Number 12, Delta Burke, Designing Women. We touched on Delta Burke's complicated departure from Designing Women in a previous video, and if you missed that one, go check it out after this. But what that video did not fully get into was the specific production chaos that preceded her exit, because before she left the show entirely, there was at least one episode where her behavior on set created a production situation significant enough to require substantial reshooting. Designing Women ran from 1986 to 1993 and was one of the sharpest ensemble comedies on CBS. Burke played Suzanne Sugarbaker, a former beauty queen with a mouth that could strip paint and a wardrobe that could fund a small country. She was magnificent in the role. She was also, by multiple accounts, increasingly difficult to work with as the show went on. The tension between Burke and the show's creators, Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason, had been building for years. Long working hours, disagreements over creative direction, and what Burke described as a hostile work environment created a pressure cooker situation on set. And in television, when a pressure cooker finally blows, it blows on camera. During the production of an episode in the show's 5th season, the situation apparently reached a boiling point. Scenes that had been filmed were deemed completely unusable after what those in the production described as an unworkable atmosphere during filming. The episode had to be substantially reconstructed with additional shooting days added to the schedule and some creative restructuring of the script to work around the problem footage. The network was not pleased, the budget took a hit, and the clock was ticking on Burke's time with the show. She was gone within 2 seasons. Number 11. David Caruso, NYPD Blue. Oh, David Caruso, the man who looked at one of the most acclaimed dramas in television history and said, "Yeah, I think I can do better in the movies." Spoiler, he could not. But before he dramatically walked off NYPD Blue entirely, which we covered in a previous video, there was a period during his final stretch on the show where his behavior on set became increasingly destabilizing for the production. NYPD Blue premiered in 1993 on ABC and immediately changed what network television drama was allowed to look like. Gritty, raw, unapologetic. David Caruso played Detective John Kelly and was widely celebrated for his performance in the show's 1st season. He even picked up a Golden Globe nomination. And then, as sometimes happens to people who get a little too much validation a little too quickly, things started to go sideways. As Caruso began pursuing his exit from the show to chase a film career, his behavior on set became what multiple production sources described as erratic and uncooperative. There was a specific episode during his final season where, according to crew members who have spoken about it over the years, the filming became so disrupted by his conduct that significant portions of the episode had to be reapproached. The production team worked around the problem footage as best they could, but some scenes were essentially rebuilt using alternate takes and adjusted coverage to construct something usable. Caruso left. The movies did not work out. He ended up on CSI Miami 10 years later, putting on sunglasses dramatically and delivering one-liners while sad music played underneath, which honestly is a career arc that deserves its own video. Number 10. Suzanne Summers, Three's Company. Now, here's where things get genuinely bizarre. We have talked about Suzanne Summers and the Three's Company contract dispute before, the salary demands, the missed tapings, the phone-in appearances. But let's really dig into what that phone-in situation meant for the production on a practical, episode-by-episode level. Three's Company ran from 1977 to 1984 and was one of ABC's biggest hits. Suzanne Summers played Chrissy Snow, the lovably dizzy blonde roommate whose comic timing and chemistry with John Ritter made the show work. When Summers began her contract dispute and started missing tapings as a negotiation tactic, the production initially tried to accommodate the situation by writing scenes where her character would simply appear via telephone. Yes, literally just a phone call, on camera, with her co-stars responding to a voice on the other end of a handset. This solution was, to put it diplomatically, not great television. Several episodes where this approach was attempted produced footage that the production felt was simply not up to broadcast standard. The scenes were flat, the energy was wrong, and the chemistry that made the show compelling was completely absent when one of the 3 main characters was being performed via telephone from somewhere outside the building. Multiple episodes during this period required additional shooting days to reconstruct scenes in ways that minimized or restructured Chrissy's appearances entirely. It was a logistical nightmare dressed up as a creative solution, and it cost the production significant time and money. Three's Company soldiered on. Chrissy went to Fresno, and the Thigh Master eventually made Summers a millionaire anyway. So, it all worked out, just not for the crew members who spent extra weeks rebuilding those episodes. Number 9. McLean Stevenson, AMASH. Here is an entry that a lot of people do not know about, and it is one of the more fascinating stories on this list, because it involves one of the most beloved ensemble casts in television history. MASH ran from 1972 to 1983 and is still one of the most acclaimed dramas in American television history. Set during the Korean War, and featuring an ensemble of characters so well developed that audiences genuinely grieved when the finale aired, which, by the way, remains the most watched television finale in American history. The finale episode drew over 106 million viewers. Let that sink in for a moment. McLean Stevenson played Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, the well-meaning, slightly bumbling commanding officer of the 4077 T8th. He was beloved. He was warm, he was funny, and by the end of season 3, he wanted out. Stevenson had become convinced he was a big enough star to carry his own show, and made the decision to leave MASH, a choice he would later publicly describe as one of the biggest mistakes of his career. His words, not mine. During the period when Stevenson was negotiating his exit, and the production was trying to manage the transition, his distraction and disengagement created filming difficulties significant enough that portions of at least one episode from his final season had to be reapproached. The production was working with an actor who was mentally already out the door, which tends to create a certain energy on camera that directors describe as technically present but emotionally absent. The footage was salvaged through creative editing and some additional shooting, but the behind-the-scenes tension during this period was significant. Stevenson left. Henry Blake was killed off in one of the most shocking episode endings in television history, and the shows he did afterward never came close to matching what he had walked away from. Number 8. Marlon Brando, Roots, The Next Generation's. Okay, now we are getting into the genuinely legendary territory, because Marlon Brando on a television miniseries set in the late 1970s is a combination of words that should immediately tell you something extraordinary either happened or was about to happen. In this case, it was very much the latter. Roots, The Next Generation's was the 1979 sequel miniseries to the landmark 1977 miniseries Roots, which had fundamentally changed what American television could accomplish as a storytelling medium. The sequel traced the Haley family story through the 20th century and assembled a remarkable cast that included Marlon Brando, who appeared as George Lincoln Rockwell, the founder of the American Nazi Party. Now, casting Brando was either a stroke of brilliance or a sign that someone on the production had not fully thought through the practical implications of working with him at this particular stage of his career. By 1979, Brando was a complicated figure on any set. His approach to the craft had become increasingly unconventional. He famously refused to memorize lines, using cue cards or written text, placed in frame or on his scene partners. He had strong and frequently expressed opinions about every aspect of production, and he was not particularly interested in adjusting his process to accommodate anyone else's schedule or budget. The filming of his scenes in Roots, The Next Generations, became what production sources described as a prolonged crisis. His methods created footage that could not be used as shot. His scenes had to be substantially restructured and, in some cases, essentially reconstructed, with different camera approaches designed to accommodate his process while still producing something usable. The production ran significantly over schedule during his involvement. When the miniseries aired, his performance was widely praised, but the people who actually had to film it needed a very long vacation afterward. Number 7. Roseanne Barr, Roseanne Long. Before the 2018 reboot controversy that ended Roseanne Barr's television career in a single tweet, she had already established a very specific reputation on the set of her original sitcom for behavior that frequently disrupted production. And look, part of this is complicated because Roseanne was her show. Her name was in the title. Her creative vision was the engine that drove the whole thing. So, the line between creative control and production chaos was sometimes genuinely blurry, but there were specific instances during the show's run, particularly in the middle seasons, where Barr's behavior on set went beyond creative disagreement into territory that created real production problems. Her conflicts with the show's writing staff were legendary. She reportedly fired multiple writers over the course of the show's run, sometimes mid-season, which created enormous continuity problems for episodes already in production. On at least one occasion, Barr decided midway through filming an episode that the script was not working and demanded fundamental changes to scenes that had already been shot. This was not a small tweak. This was a ground-up rethinking of what the episode was trying to do, executed in the middle of a production schedule that had no room for it. The episode had to be substantially rebuilt. New script pages, new shooting days, reconstructed scenes. The crew absorbed the cost and the chaos because, again, her name was on the building. To be fair, Roseanne was also one of the most innovative and boundary-pushing comedies of its era. Sometimes the chaos produced great television. Sometimes it just produced chaos. This particular episode was firmly in the second category. Number 6. Shannen Doherty, Charmed. Let's talk about Shannen Doherty on Charmed. Because if you followed this show during its original run from 1998 to 2006, you know that Doherty's departure at the end of season 3 was one of the most discussed events in the show's history. But what the entertainment press coverage focused on was the interpersonal drama between cast members. What got less attention was what her behavior during certain episodes actually meant for the production on a practical level. Doherty played Prue Halliwell, the eldest of the Charmed ones, and she brought a genuine intensity to the role that grounded the show's more fantastical elements. She was talented. She was also, by multiple accounts from cast and crew, extremely difficult to work with, consistently. There were multiple episodes during her 3 seasons where production ran into significant difficulties related to her conduct on set. These ranged from showing up late to filming, to conflicts with co-stars that created an atmosphere on set that directors described as nearly impossible to work in. On at least one occasion, the footage from an episode's shooting days was deemed significantly compromised by the atmosphere and conduct during filming, requiring additional work to produce something that could actually air. The production managed. It always manages. That is what television productions do. They absorb the chaos and deliver the episode on schedule because the alternative is a gap in the broadcast schedule, which the network treats approximately like a national emergency. But the crew members who had to manage those extra shooting days while navigating an incredibly tense set have not forgotten it. Number 5. Bill Murray, Saturday Night Live. Now here is an entry that is going to raise some eyebrows, because Bill Murray on Saturday Night Live is usually discussed as one of the great success stories of that show's early era. And in a lot of ways, it was. But the transition period when Murray joined the cast in 1977 after Chevy Chase departed was one of the more turbulent moments in the show's history. And Murray himself has been pretty open over the years about the fact that he was not exactly easy to work with. Saturday Night Live in its early years was famously chaotic. Lorne Michaels running a weekly live comedy show with a rotating ensemble of some of the most anarchic comedic talents in America was never going to be a smooth operation. But live television has a built-in safety valve. If something goes wrong, it goes wrong live, the world sees it, and then it is over. The challenge is the dress rehearsal process and the pre-tape segments. Murray's arrival created specific tensions with other cast members and with the production staff that are well documented in various oral histories of the show. During at least one early episode of his tenure, his behavior during the production week created enough disruption to the pre-tape segment process that material had to be substantially reworked. Now, Saturday Night Live has always operated with a certain amount of last-minute chaos built into its DNA. But there is a difference between creative chaos and destructive chaos, and the line was crossed at least once during this period in a way that cost the production significant time and energy. Murray became one of the great SNL cast members. He found his footing, found his chemistry with the ensemble, and produced some genuinely legendary television. But the early days were rockier than the highlight reels suggest. Number 4. Farrah Fawcett, Charlie's Angels. Oh, we could spend an entire video on Farrah Fawcett and Charlie's Angels. Actually, we partially did in a previous episode, so go check that out. But for today's purposes, let's focus on something very specific. Because in the period just before Fawcett made her decision to leave the show after its first season, there was a specific production period where her distraction, her divided attention, and her obvious desire to be somewhere else created filming problems significant enough to require substantial additional work. Charlie's Angels premiered in 1976 on ABC and was an immediate cultural phenomenon. Fawcett's Jill Monroe became an icon practically overnight. The red swimsuit poster, the hair, the smile, all of it. She was the breakout star of a show full of breakout stars, and by the end of the first season, she knew it, and more importantly, her representatives knew it. As Fawcett began making clear that she intended to leave the show to pursue a film career, the atmosphere during her final episodes became increasingly strained. There are accounts from the production of scenes where her performance was so distracted and disconnected that the footage was essentially unusable as shot. Multiple scenes from at least one of her final episodes required reconstruction through additional photography and creative restructuring. The producers were furious. They had a contract, they had a hit show, and they had an actress who was clearly mentally composing her acceptance speech for a movie career that, as it turned out, was going to have a very rocky start. The lawsuits and the guest appearance negotiations that followed were, if anything, even messier than the production chaos. But Fawcett found her way back to serious acting eventually, and proved her range in ways that Charlie's Angels never required of her. Number 3. Cybill Shepherd, Moonlighting. If you were watching television in the mid-1980s, you know Moonlighting, the ABC detective comedy drama that ran from 1985 to 1989 and starred Cybill Shepherd and Bruce Willis as two of the most combustible lead characters in the history of the medium. Maddie Hayes and David Addison were lightning in a bottle. The chemistry was electric, the writing was sharp, and behind the scenes, according to virtually every person who worked on that production, it was an absolute carnival of chaos that makes most of the other entries on this list look like a quiet afternoon at the library. Moonlighting is a fascinating case study in how an impossible working environment can somehow, occasionally, produce brilliant television. The show was famously plagued by production delays, schedule overruns, and the kind of interpersonal tension between its two leads that made every shooting day feel like defusing a bomb while someone argues about where you went to school. Shepherd was, by multiple accounts, as difficult to work with as her co-star. She had strong opinions about her character, her lighting, her wardrobe, and approximately everything else. The production regularly ran behind schedule. Episodes came in late, and there were specific episodes during the show's run where her behavior during filming created production situations that required substantial reconstruction to resolve. One episode in the show's third season is particularly well documented among crew members who have spoken about it. The filming fell apart so completely over multiple shooting days that the episode had to be nearly entirely rebuilt. Additional photography, restructured sequences, creative editorial work designed to paper over the gaps left by unusable footage. The episode aired. It looked like Moonlighting always looked, which is to say wildly stylish and entertaining. But the production cost to get it there was extraordinary. Moonlighting ended in 1989, and Bruce Willis went off to make a little movie called Die Hard. You may have heard of it. Shepherd continued to have a successful television career, and the show remains one of the great what-could-have-been stories in television history. What might it have produced if anybody involved could actually stand to be in the same room together for more than 45 minutes? Number 2. Patrick Duffy, Dallas. All right, Dallas. The show that ran from 1978 to 1991 and defined the primetime soap opera in American television. The Ewings, South Fork Ranch, JR's scheming. The question of who shot JR, which in 1980 became the most watched single episode of any television drama to that point. Dallas was a cultural institution. Patrick Duffy played Bobby Ewing, JR's younger, more principled brother, and was one of the show's central characters. In 1985, Duffy decided to leave the show. His character, Bobby Ewing, was killed off at the end of season 8 in a hit-and-run accident. The show moved on. A full season was produced without him. Season 9 of Dallas aired and attracted significantly lower ratings. The network started making phone calls. Now, here is where things get genuinely strange. Duffy agreed to return to the show for season 10. But this created an enormous problem. An entire season of Dallas had aired in which Bobby Ewing was definitively dead. How do you bring him back? The production solution was one of the most audacious retcons in television history. Pam Ewing woke up from a dream, walked into the bathroom, and there was Bobby Ewing in the shower, alive, which meant that the entire preceding season had been a dream. The chaos this created on a production level was significant. Episodes from season 9 had to be revisited, not fully reshot, but substantially reapproached from a continuity standpoint. Additional material had to be produced to bridge the gap between the dream season explanation and the show moving forward. And the production of The Return had to be built around managing the fallout from a decision that confused and frustrated enormous portions of the show's audience. It ranks as one of the most talked about decisions in the history of the primetime soap opera. The shower scene is still discussed today as a landmark moment of television audacity. Whether that is a compliment or a criticism depends very much on which season 9 storyline you were most invested in. Number 1. Shannen Doherty, Beverly Hills, 90210. And here we are, the entry that absolutely had to be number 1 on this list, because when it comes to on-set behavior that created production chaos significant enough to require substantial reshooting, no one in the 1990s created more well-documented, widely discussed, industry-shaking disruption than Shannen Doherty during her time on Beverly Hills. 90210. Now, Doherty appeared twice on this list tonight. Once for Charmed, and once right here at number 1. And I want to be clear that I am not piling on. The woman is a talented actress. She has demonstrated that repeatedly over the course of her career. But the behind-the-scenes reality of her time on Beverly Hills 90210 from 1990 to 1994 is one of the most thoroughly documented production disasters in the history of American network television. Beverly Hills 90210 was Fox's defining drama of the early 1990s, a show about wealthy teenagers navigating high school in one of America's most privileged zip codes that somehow managed to tackle real issues in ways that resonated with audiences across the country. Doherty played Brenda Walsh, the Minnesota transplant trying to find her footing in the Beverly Hills social ecosystem. She was one of the show's most compelling characters, and her on-screen work was frequently excellent. Off-screen, it was a different story. Accounts from cast and crew members describe an atmosphere around Doherty's participation in the show that was, in many ways, uniquely challenging. There were reports of conflicts with co-stars, with directors, with producers, of filming sessions that went badly off the rails, of an on-set environment that made it genuinely difficult to produce usable footage on a consistent basis. Multiple former crew members and production staff have described specific episodes, particularly in the show's 3rd and 4th seasons, where scenes had to be substantially reshot or restructured because the footage obtained during initial filming was not usable. The reasons given were varied. Conduct during filming, interpersonal tensions that made certain scene combinations essentially impossible to execute, situations that required the production to find creative solutions through additional photography and editorial restructuring. The cost to the production was significant. The impact on morale was, by multiple accounts, enormous. The effect on the overall shooting schedule created ripple effects that touched every other cast member and every crew member working on those episodes. And yet, and this is the part that makes this story genuinely interesting rather than just a tale of on-set bad behavior, Brenda Walsh became one of the defining characters of that era of television. Audiences were fascinated by her relationships, her conflicts, her evolution as a character. The show was arguably stronger for having her in it, even as the production was struggling to manage the chaos that surrounded filming her scenes. Doherty left the show at the end of season 4. The circumstances of her departure were messy. The internet was just getting started as a cultural force. But even in 1994, the stories spread fast. Her departure from 90210 became one of the defining Hollywood stories of that moment. She went on to Charmed, which, as we discussed earlier in this list, had its own chapter of production difficulties. And later, she became one of the more sympathetic public figures of recent years, as she dealt with her health challenges with extraordinary grace and openness. The story of Shannen Doherty on Beverly Hills 90210 is not a simple story. It never was. It is the story of a young woman with genuine talent navigating an industry that was frequently not equipped to manage or support her. It is the story of a production dealing with challenges that it did not always handle well either. And it is the story of television that somehow got made anyway, got watched by millions of people, and became part of the cultural fabric of the 1990s in a way that nobody involved could have fully predicted. Which is, when you think about it, the story of a lot of great television. Chaos at the edges, something worth watching at the center. And that is a wrap on 14 television episodes that had to be completely rebuilt because of one actor's behavior. The thing that gets me every time I dig into stories like these is not the chaos itself. It is the army of writers, crew members, editors, and producers who absorbed that chaos every single time and still got the episode to air. Those people never get the drama specials. They never get the retrospective interviews. They just get the overtime. So here's to them. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these entries surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. And if any of you have behind-the-scenes stories from shows of this era that we have not covered yet, please share them, because that is genuinely how we find some of our best topics. Old TV cinema runs on your nostalgia and your comments, and we read every single one. If you enjoyed this deep dive, go ahead and hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss our next video. We have some stories coming up that are going to make tonight's list look like a perfectly smooth production. Thanks for watching. This is Aaron. This is Old TV Cinema, and we will see you next time.